gonna do recording. Excellent. All right. Thanks so much, Maya and Claire, for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you guys to talk more about career advice. And in this section, we're mostly focusing on, I guess, career advice because you guys are really in the thick of it right now, just getting launched. But Maya, could you do me a favor and introduce us to Claire? We've met Maya before. We've worked together for quite a while now, interning and being the chief right-hand person, especially now that COVID's happening, which I really appreciate. But Claire, this is the first time we're meeting.
Yeah, so Claire and I actually met about probably 4 years ago now. She's also from Michigan, and we met at a University of Kentucky meetup before going to school, and we ended up staying friends for a little while. We had the same major, right? Were you international economics as well before you switched?
Yeah, for a little bit, not too long though. I ended up international business minor, and then ended up just doing ISC things, so I didn't end up with that minor. But
yeah, we both ended up crossing paths again a few years later when we had the same major, and we really were able to start hanging out more when we both joined the competition team at our school for advertising, and that's kind of when we were spending literally probably almost every single day together. There was 13 of us on the team, and Claire was on the team along with another girl named Gabby who was also on the team, and she was from Michigan as well. We had met at the meetup too, so it was just really weird that our paths all crossed again, and for this amazing experience, amazing but difficult experience that we all went through together. And we were together a lot before COVID happened, and then everything was virtual, so adjusting to that was weird. But yeah, so that's Claire, and she has ISC major. I don't know if there's, I'm sorry, I don't know what else.
Oh no, it's okay. So
what does that stand for?
Integrated Strategic Communications.
Okay, great.
And then I'm also a French minor, but in ISC there's 4 paths. So I know Maya's account management, I'm pretty sure, but I was creative side. And then there's also like a direct marketing side, and then a public relations too. But I did direct.
Great.
Or sorry, creative. I was
Good. Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about the project that you did, Claire. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah. So for the National Student Advertising Competition team, there's about 1 at every school in the region, depending how big the school is. You can have either 5 members on a team, or you could have up to, I know one school had 30 members on a team.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really collaborative, and at every single start of the school year, they announce the campaign. So this year we had Adobe, and we were working with their advertising software. So basically we had started a campaign from scratch. They gave us a booklet with some like early on research. So we took that and like sorted through all of it. I think the booklet was like 45 pages long.
Wow.
Yeah, so we go through all of that, and then we decide on what we're going to do for our campaign. And then everybody has their own little part in the team. I know Maya was a big planner of all of it, but so we had some people working on strictly creative, or the PR people were working on when we were going to release all our campaign stuff. And then we had media budget people. So you really get the feel of the entire campaign, and like how it goes from start one with the research to the final product, which we ended up presenting virtually because of COVID, but we were supposed to go to Columbus, where we were going to be regionally with, I think there is 8 teams in our district. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's just a little background on what we did.
Yeah, we ended up placing in 3rd place in our region.
Wow, that's exciting! Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we were really hoping for 1st, but 3rd was good too. It was a very strange experience doing presenting virtually, just because we were all expecting to go on a stage and have, to present in front of everybody, and they do a Q&A session, and usually that Q&A session is right after you present. But because it was virtually, they gave us a time, and we all had to jump on this call and be there and they just fired off questions, like these different judges fired off questions, and I had to field the questions to everyone. But it's so awkward because like virtually it's hard to take cues. I feel like
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
I'm like, you don't know when someone's going to start talking, when they're done talking. With you in person, you can like, I don't know, you can just read the room. And so it was definitely a little bit more of an awkward kind of situation, but it went really quick. And, you know, we answered all the questions, but adjusting to the presentation virtually was, I feel like it was a challenge for us near the end.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because in prior years, the presentation is almost like a show. The presenters don't have cards on stage. They've memorized a whole entire campaign, have to do it in 20 minutes exactly. And then you immediately go into the Q&A. But in the presentation, there's props, there's a slider, and usually you do it in front of a whole entire like room full of people, all your different teams. But this year was really different. It was interesting though. After we presented, we got to see everyone else's online presentations, and everyone had a different approach to it. I know we had all of our speakers in the top, but other people just did the presentation, a little slideshow. So it was really interesting figuring that out for the first time, because none of us had really used Zoom before Corona. So it was all new to everyone.
I had a child in the background.
Or
Dad, I can't get the door open. And it was for Adobe?
Yep. It was for their software, Adobe Experience Cloud for advertising. And it's a software they've more recently developed. But I mean, when you think Adobe, you automatically think Creative Cloud. I mean, that's what they've kind of instilled in your brain, is to think Photoshop or Illustrator, or even like their PDF, like getting a PDF.
yeah, Acrobat.
Acrobat, yeah, exactly. But you don't think about the other services that they offer. And so this campaign was a B2B campaign, which is also the first time that they had ever done something like that. And it was really hard. I feel like for the first thing that we did when we got this campaign is we did so much research, because, you know, we had to learn about this product that they wouldn't even let us use either. We never got to test the product. So we didn't even know what we were selling. They didn't give us how much it cost, because you had to have a consultation with like an agent in order to figure out how much it would cost for you. And also, in our curriculum, at least at, you know, UK, we had never really studied B2B campaigns. So we were going in completely blind on how to market to businesses rather than and then just consumers. But I think the approach we took is that even though it is a business, you're still selling to a person. They're still a consumer, whether they're buying with company money or their personal money. They still want to be kind of advertised
Personal.
in a similar way. Yeah, personal. And that's kind of the approach that we took as we developed our campaign.
Yeah, and to make it super personal, we a lot of our elements were very direct. So we sent little boxes to companies, and they were all different and like specialized towards the company. So even though we are selling to another business, it was super personal with the person like who receives it feels attached to Adobe. So we really tried to work that angle in our campaign. Yeah, but it's funny doing B2B, because we had to, I mean, along with the product doing research, we also had to figure out how to do B2B campaigns, because mostly we just learn, okay, so here's this soap, have a campaign for it in the next week. So this was very different for that, especially because we didn't have the program, which made it very difficult. So we had to go online and find reviews of people who had actually used it. I think if we would have had the actual product, our campaign might have been a little different, but I mean, you deal with what you have.
Yeah, exactly.
So are you saying that because you didn't really get to experience the product that you're selling firsthand, that it made it extra challenging? Yeah, I can see that.
It was also a really complex product that none of us,
Yeah.
since we were just students, that none of us had worked with. We had Gabby, as I mentioned her earlier, she had like previously just worked with it at an internship, but very vaguely. And like, she didn't, you know, play too much with it just because it is more of an advanced software. So she was the only one that really had experience with the actual product itself, and that was even limited. So, you know, we were kind of going off with all of the videos that we saw online of like what the product does. And, you know, we looked at competitors, you know, like Salesforce was like one of the top competitors for this product, and theirs was a little different. I mean, they let you test out the product, but, you know, we weren't selling Salesforce, so it's not like we could, you know, use that research. We just kind of had to go off with what we learned online. And honestly, research was like the biggest part of the campaign, just kind of with our target audience, with the product itself, just kind of with everything. We spent a lot of time kind of searching online for stuff.
Yeah, which I think could be, you know, really challenging if you can't physically interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
It was also interesting. So we were at the like head of our research for the product and learning about what people think about Adobe and this type of software when Corona really started getting serious. So we had to figure out how to do surveys and in-person interviews with everyone freaking out about this new pandemic. So it was really interesting. We had a couple phone interviews and online interviews, whereas if we would have it would have been normal, we would have just gone to their office and talked to them in person and maybe gotten a better interview out of it. So that was another interesting challenge to this whole campaign.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, it sounds like it was a really great learning experience. So there are specific takeaways that other recent grads or current students might want to think about?
I would say, I think the coolest part of the experience for me was working on a team with people who were just as dedicated to the cause as I was, of like putting in the effort. And I think, you know, I hope that one day, you know, when I do enter my career, that I'm able to work on a team like that, that's still passionate and comes to work every day, not because they have to. I mean, everyone has to, but, you know, but comes because they want to and they enjoy doing the work that they do. I never want to be in a position where, you know, I'm with people who are just doing it to get the job done. I think what made our team so special is that we all truly cared, and we also played off each other's strengths. I think, you know, like Claire was saying, our major is separated into paths. And even though on your degree it doesn't say your path, you take most classes in those paths. So, you know, a lot of the creative people work together to design the book and the presentation and all of our graphics. Whereas, you know, I focused a lot on the budget. Claire did a lot of research. She also helped with some of the strategy, the creative strategy. So I think that was the coolest part too, is like making sure that when you are working on a team, that you figure out what everyone is good at and play everyone to their strengths, because it's going to get you so much further than if you're just everyone's trying to do everything, because that just with a project, it's never going to work out well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything Maya said. I think we did a really good job as a team showing up and having those late nights and staying positive during them. I mean, we brought snacks, and our teacher even brought her little dog to like keep the motivation going, especially in the end. And after spring break, when everything was shutting down, we were still there and we were ready to work. And I think that work ethic in our team is something that, I mean, I look for in when applying to jobs. Just that like positive attitude and really caring about what you're doing, because I mean, this was really in the end just a hobby for all of us. I mean, we were on a team and it was Scholastic, but we were doing this to really come out of it with something that we're proud of. And I think we all got there because we worked together. So.
Yeah. And this was something that we had to apply for too. I don't think we said anything. There's a capstone class that everyone can take, but this is the specific competition team that you apply for. And so we found out near the end of the semester in the fall last year whether or not we made the team. And so while we were doing this competitively, there's other seniors who were doing it just with, you know, a class, and they presented to their class. It wasn't as competitive, and we didn't really get any type of, you know, extra grade bump or like really anything. It was really just for the experience and for like kind of like a resume building, but really, I mean, for the experience, because you don't know how well you're going to do. You don't know when you apply, you don't know what your team's going to look like. You put a lot of trust into that, like there's going to be other, good students who are going to, apply themselves. And I think we were lucky that we did have, classmates who did that. So it was overall a great experience for sure.
For a minute, I honestly forgot it was our capstone.
And how many people were on your team?
13.
13, you said.
Yep.
Wow.
And then we had like a faculty advisor who she kind of like guided us through everything and told us when we needed to scrap an idea entirely, or kind of maybe you should look into SEO. Maybe that's a good idea. So she kind of guided us, but and we did have some assignments in between that we had to have just in order to graduate. You had to do so we had like a test on the Adobe brand where we had to literally memorize the book they gave us. But the majority of the class was us working. We would go in on Tuesdays and Thursdays and during our class time and work, but we spent, got hours each day together outside of class as well. So it was a huge time consumption, definitely, but worth it in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it was definitely worth it. It's definitely a talking point for me when I go into these interviews, saying that I've worked with a team before and we did really well, and just saying my role, and I feel proud in what my other teammates did too. So I think it's a good talking point.
Yeah, I agree.
And how much do you think the people who are interviewing you value the team perspective?
I think it definitely depends on where I'm interviewing. From more of like an agency standpoint, I feel like they really care about it. But when I'm interviewing for more of an in-house marketing role where I'm just going to be doing the social media or like administrative work, I don't think that they really care that much. But my ultimate goal is to work for an agency. So those are the type of people that I really want to impress.
Yeah, I agree. I think the skills that I took away from it, because like I said, we had to do a lot of research. Yeah. So we learned a lot about different items with B2B. And I think there are a lot of B2B businesses, and to be able to have that under my belt of like, I worked on a campaign for a B2B business. So I may not have the experience of working for a company for 2 to 3 years or 1 to 2 years or whatever, when they're looking at the qualifications. I can still say, well, I did work on a campaign for Adobe for a national competition that we ended up scoring. We were in 3rd place regionally. And so, I do have experience in it, maybe not, professionally, but I did work for an entire semester on a campaign. So I think there's value in that of like what we learned from the campaign also, rather on top of, working in a team where you're assigned a role. I think there's value in different parts of it.
Definitely, I agree with that.
So if I had to ask you guys how many hours, no, don't think too hard, just like what comes in your mind, how many hours do you think you spent on it?
Oh my God.
I would say, okay, so maybe about 30, 25 a week.
Yeah.
25 to 30 hours a week. Okay.
Yeah.
Over what semester?
For
like let's call it 10 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, 16. It's about 16 weeks. Okay. And we got like 1 week off. So
1 week off.
Yeah, not really.
And then did you present? When did you present? Wasn't that after graduation?
Yeah. No, it was just before. And what we did is we recorded a video is how we did it. I was one of the presenters, and we took like 5 takes, and by the end of it we were burnt out from reading the script and clicking. And then the Q&A, that was near like the end of this, that was like right at the end. But the people who continued on to like the next round, they had to work after graduation. So we would have if we had placed in 1st place in our region, but since we got 3rd, ours ended after that 1st round, which was during finals week.
Yeah.
And Maya, we already talked about that you're going to grad school. You've been working with me all summer.
Yes.
But Claire, what have you been up to this summer?
So at the current moment, I am looking for a job, preferably in advertising, but I've just been applying to a ton of marketing jobs. I'm back in Detroit, so I'm looking here instead of in Kentucky, although I love Kentucky. I'm back home, and since competition team, I've been doing a little like freelance graphic design. I know some family and friends who need logos for things or starting businesses. So I've just been trying to build my portfolio and keep working on those skills and waiting till something comes along. Just keep picking away.
How have you been finding interviewing? Are you interviewing remotely? How has that
Yeah.
process been in all this crazy time?
It's been interesting. So I am just interviewing remotely. Um, it's a weird dynamic for applying to jobs because there's not any networking events going on. So I can't really go to a mixer or something like that where you might meet most of your connections. I've been trying to work through family and friends, also just going on LinkedIn and all the job sites and applying. But one thing that's been pretty helpful that I've been getting most of my interviews from is going to the agencies I really like and respect and finding an email of the recruiter and just emailing them, sending my resume, saying, hey, I don't know if you need anything right now. Doesn't say you need anyone, but here's my resume just in case. And I've gotten a couple emails back from those, which has been really good. Plus, the agency that you're going to or the company that you're going to and respect them. So I think that's just what I'm going to keep doing until the right opportunity comes along.
That sounds good. And are you getting any feedback from the agencies about that they're having hiring freezes or?
Yeah, just about everyone is having a hiring freeze. There's a couple people that are slowly opening doors, but since everyone just took such a hard hit, it's opening back up pretty slowly.
And are you looking, so you're looking for full-time positions, right, Claire? Not like internships and things like that?
Yeah, I've been looking for full-time, but I have been just applying to everything because working part-time or an internship is better than sitting here waiting for someone to reach out to me. So just got to keep moving on, keep looking for stuff to do and building my portfolio. Yeah.
And are you getting any bites on internships at all, or are those?
Internships are interesting because most of the time you already have to live in the city and a lot of them are looking for actual students. There are a decent amount that say recent grads. So those are the ones that I've been applying to, and mostly they're all full-time. At this point, I've already had a couple part-time internships, so I'm looking for a full-time one that would potentially get me a position in the company. That's my goal for internships right now. But yeah, a lot of them have also starting in the fall or the spring, so it's a little later start date.
Good, you get a chance to enjoy summer a little bit.
Yeah.
Are you feeling really stressed about things, or you seem like you're pretty calm?
Well, at the beginning, I was pretty stressed about it all, but since I graduated in May, I've just kind of been keeping my options open, and whatever happens, happens. Just got to keep a positive attitude about it all, because if I decide to shut down, I mean, no opportunities are going to come my way. So yeah, that's my mindset on it.
That's a good mindset to have, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And take some time. So, it's interesting because I've been self-employed for like 12 years now. Yeah, 12 years.
Yeah.
And when I took a voluntary buyout from the Boston Globe, and then the Great Recession hit, like within 3 months of when I took the buyout. And I learned, and I've also since learned that when you're not busy with clients, it's a really great time to focus on what you're really interested in and how you can move your career forward. So I spent a lot of time learning SEO, going to conferences. I would just find ways to be able to go to a conference for free or just my travel.
Yeah.
Just covering my travel expenses. At one point, I commuted back and forth to New York City from Rhode Island for a conference. Actually, I did that a lot. If it was a day-long conference, I would get there at like 9:30 or 10, and then I'd take the like 9 o'clock train home. But there's great ways that you can, unfortunately now, all those, or maybe it is fortunate, right? All these conferences, it doesn't cost them anything to sell you a virtual seat. So that might be a good thing to tap into if you can find some conferences that you can request attendance to. especially, I know online networking is hard, but if there are any meetups that I was on an entrepreneurs meetup this morning, just kind of catch up with some people, and so it's hard, right? Because but also take the time to do some of the things that you want to do for yourself personally. Like, oh, I want to master meditation, things
Yeah,
like that. So it
exactly.
might be an opportunity to look into those types of things.
Yeah, my reading list, I'm definitely killing that. Got
Well,
a
what's on
couple
your
books
reading
down.
list? Anything advertising related?
Oh, not, I mean, there's some like motivation books on there and stuff, but not specifically advertising related. It's probably a good idea. Start reading a couple of those.
You can even look at like maybe some of like I know I Googled before like what every advertiser should read, and there's some good book lists and a lot
Yeah.
of like online free like PDFs and stuff. I know I've
Yeah.
skimmed through some stuff online before. Even articles are good too.
Yeah, I've been I have the advertising newsletter Daily Carnage, and so I've been going through there and then just like weekly just reading up on all the advertising stuff to make sure I don't get too behind on any new trends that's happening.
Yeah, because we know they happen fast.
Oh yeah. We did our
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah. Well, and if you want, I can share some of my Audible list too, that I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and then I bookmark them, and then I kind of go back and re-listen to them. Another tool that I use is an app called Blinkist, and it's kind of like Cliff Notes. Oops, sorry. Okay, now we have a tick extraction going
Oh gosh.
on the child. Oh geez. Anyway, so Maya, any other thoughts or tips?
I'm trying to think. I think just like the biggest thing that I learned from, the experience of working with other people is like you don't need to know everything about everything, but knowing a little bit about everything is good too. Like just not necessarily being it's impossible to be a master of everything, like specifically like digital marketing or advertising. But if you know a little bit about everything, that way you kind of have something to say in all the conversations and be able to give your input. I think that's really good. And I think that employers will look for that too. Like I don't want someone who's just going to kind of sit around and not really offer anything. I think being able to bring stuff to the team is good. And I think, you can learn a little bit about everything from like what we were just talking about, like books and, listening to podcasts or reading articles. I think, I don't know everything about SEO, but from the work that I've done with you, I know a little bit. And I think, that's better than nothing. So, but yeah, that's kind of my parting wisdom.
And that was one of the things that you mentioned. That's, I think, what kicked off this idea to talk about the Adobe project with you guys, is that Maya, you were the only person who knew anything about SEO on your team, right? Out of 13 people?
Yeah, well, it was so weird because our professor, she brought it up. She's like, well, what about SEO or SEM? And she was like, does anybody know anything? And I was like, I mean, I know a little bit, and my a little bit was kind of what started our team. And, I did a lot more research with it after that, but it was hard because, it was a big part of our campaign, and it was a lot of pressure to, be the only one who just had a little bit of, like, it wasn't like I was, master of anything, but that's
Yeah.
kind of what we rolled with it. So, but yeah, that is what kicked off our conversation about all of it.
Yeah, I think I just know the acronym.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I mean, I could try, but
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I learned a lot more through the campaign and stuff, but starting off, it's interesting doing like previous campaigns, especially in creative, the path that I was in. It's a lot more traditional, and this campaign, we really needed to push our boundaries since it is a tech company, and they're on the forefront of all these new exciting trends. So that was something that we had to really focus on. But
Yeah.
Huh.
We didn't really get a lot of exposure to that necessarily in all of our classes. Our classes focused a little bit more on the traditional side of things, I feel like. So I kind of missed out on that like emerging trends, piece of everything.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, I mean, it's just too hard. Everything changes so quickly. So if you're a professor who's developing a syllabus and a curriculum, it could be out of date before the semester even ends. So in a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense for the high cost of a 4-year degree that you would spend a lot of time on SEO, which I mean, I would say that there's a lot of best practices now than there were 12 years ago when I was getting into it.
Yeah.
So much has changed. So, from the professor's perspective, it doesn't necessarily make sense. I mean, there are people who spend their entire careers, who have spent decades just focusing on SEO. And if you're a professor who has, that's just one section of what, maybe 4 courses that they're teaching in a semester, it's a lot to kind of dig into, but it's important. And Maya, I think you know more than you think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I know a good amount. I get, I feel like I have to practice a lot. I think that's what the deal is with SEO is like, you can read as much as you want, but until you're starting to do SEO and SEM, like applying it to something, it's hard to pick up. But I feel like I have learned a lot specifically about SEO, like through WordPress and writing blog posts and keywords and things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's one of those practice makes perfect things. Like, how many characters, and they've changed the character counts, but for a while there, I probably can still write exactly to the character count or know, okay, how many words can I fit in here, and the concepts and the thoughts. I've gotten to the point now where I can nail it in like a couple takes. But I also spent 15 years writing headlines and captions on newspapers. So I feel like I had an advantage, kind of like Twitter, people would be like, oh, it's so short. I'm like, you just edit, move things around, hack it up. But, and that's evolved now too, where the character counts aren't quite as important. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Are there other tools that you guys would recommend, or other skill sets that that you found that you needed when you got into this capstone project that maybe you hadn't gotten in a course?
I would say one thing that I definitely learned through all my classes, but it wasn't as important as it could have been, was just copywriting. We wrote so much for our plans book, and we had one girl go through it all who's super good at copy. But for the most part, learning a certain style and voice for the certain article or page you're writing, or just describing things. I think if I would have had a little more copy experience, I definitely could have helped out more with that section than I did. But that's one of the only other things. I think for the most part, especially being creative, I don't know so much about like PR, but most of my major was just creating campaigns. So I kind of understood the process of it all. But I could see where other paths didn't really understand the whole campaign structure fully. But also, I didn't know that much about direct, like SEO or other parts. So, I mean, we all had our strong suits. That was just something that I noticed.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up, because that's something that we talked about last week about writing for a company and being able to use like the voice and the tone of the company, and that being kind of a harder skill to learn that like takes time. So when we were having to write for Adobe, almost like that was our voice, and so that was part of that research process of like how they wanted their tone to be, and we kind of had to roll with that, and it made more sense for the voice to be coming from 1 or 2 people rather than all 13 of us, because we wanted it to be consistent. So while we all kind of had a role of writing it, there was a really large editing process, just because we wanted it to be consistent and to have that Adobe voice throughout, which I think is really important when you're working with a business, for it to be consistent.
Yeah, copywriting is something that, like you said, you just have to do it. You have to get in there and do it. But also, as you guys said, this is where the perk of working with a team. And one thing I felt really important when I'm structuring the college classes that I've taught is that there's always a group project, right? Always, always. And even occasionally, especially this past semester, we had 3 interns, including Maya. And so just figuring out what everyone's strengths are and how you can best adapt and utilize. Maya happens to be particularly well-rounded. And Claire, it sounds like you have a lot of skills also, not just limited to the creative piece. Now, when you say creative, what would you include with that?
So I would say that ISC is definitely a communications major. So in account or direct or public relations, you learn the different ways to communicate with buyers or sellers, the people that you're working with. Creative is adding that art element to it. I mean, it's not exactly art, but you learn how to get in and change the graphics or the text to convey the tone that you want, how to catch people's attention. A lot of our campaigns, while I did in creative, like with the group projects, try to be original. So it's really mostly about how to convey that communication creatively, I would say, if that really makes sense. Because
I'm just wondering, like, is it more design oriented, or is that a totally different degree? Is that part of your track, or?
yeah, so we there's no actual design classes, but they highly recommend you take them. I learned Photoshop in the whole creative suite while under creative path. And a lot of people, my minor was French because that's my particular interest, but a lot of the people in my path had graphic design minors.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very graphics focused.
Yeah, and I think there was it's digital media and design was the name of the minor.
Yeah.
That's a really hard minor to get into because so many people want to learn graphic design, and so it was hard to get into those classes. And ISC specifically offered a few like graphic design courses, which I took one. But I missed out, and as the account management path, which is like almost the complete opposite of creative, to be honest. It's like,
a lot more numbers.
Yeah, it is. It's more of the budgeting, the planning side of things. But I think there's a lot of strategy with the creative side that I missed out on in a way, where it's like, trying to create it's like creating advertisements of like, thinking about the target audience and what will appeal to them, while also using your graphic design skills to create that advertisement. But there's reasoning behind it. So it's not just like Photoshop. It's like, why did you use the font that you used and the colors and, things like that on top of, kind of who is your target audience? Who are you trying to reach with this advertisement?
Yeah, a classic creative class, there's 3 of them you have to take. So you start off, you get your campaign, let's just say it's soap. Then you have to go and take a week of research. You figure out exactly who you want, what social media they use, what websites they visit often, magazines, all the basic things. And then you go in and you decide, okay, so this is our target audience, how is this going to work? And then you get to the graphics, and then you have your presentation. So the graphics really are mostly the 3rd step. So it is really strategy that we learn. But having a graphic design minor really helps.
Oh, that's fun. That's my favorite part. But I mean, you kind of don't really. It's going to be fun for you guys when you're able to exercise it, right? I mean, Maya, you have been able to exercise it because Maya does all the Newport Interactive Marketing events. She launched ROI and so that I think is a really important piece. So I think that you have the balance there. But yeah, Claire, are there things that you feel hiring managers want to see from recent grads, or any tips of things that everybody should be looking at?
One thing that I have been preaching is just flexibility. Everything's changing so constantly. I mean, in the advertising world, things are always changing, but in real life, things are a little unsettled right now. No one knows when they're going to be going back to work or if they can work remote. So I've been really preaching like the jack of all trades, flexibility whenever I've been talking to people. Just if someone needs a new Instagram post, I can do that. But if someone needs copy for a blog post or research, I can do that as well. And I think as you're starting in an entry-level position, especially, you don't really need to have an extreme specialization. Just knowing the basics of everything will get you pretty far. And then as you get more into your career, you can really get super deep into what you're super passionate about. But to start off, I think being a jack of all trades is something that people look for, definitely.
There are a lot of round holes out there, right? So you kind of want to make sure that you're rounded and you can fit.
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Maya, just based on having interned and done so many projects, are there specific skills that you'd recommend to recent grads that they look into?
I think people are looking for someone who is going to, I guess, just, be willing to do anything that you're asked of in a way, and also like not being too dependent. I know I said this before, but like being able to independently work, especially right now with everything being remote, I think is really important because you're in a completely different setting. And I think, as we talk about, emails get lost. Someone's not going to have time to constantly be asking, getting emails, asking 500 questions. So you really have to be able to take initiative on projects and kind of run with it. Doing research, I think, we talked about how much research we did. And sometimes that's all it takes, is just doing a little bit of research on something and getting your questions answered that way. I think you can learn a lot from what's online. And so I think taking advantage of those resources before kind of going and, asking a bunch of questions that maybe you can kind of problem solve yourself. I think people are looking for problem solvers and independent workers for sure.
Positive problem solving. That's what I call
Yeah.
that. And that's a rare thing, especially even now. But so often I think people just get a little bit stuck in their ways, but the goal really is like, okay, we have a problem. And I also feel like if you have that focus, it removes a lot of the why didn't you do this perspective. It's like, okay, hey, I noticed this, or what do you think about that? Or, and I find, especially in digital marketing, you're better off actually producing something that's good rather than let perfection be the enemy of the good. Because then you can now you have some metrics, now you have some feedback about what worked, what didn't, and then you can evolve from there, which I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. It's part of the learning process. I think you can't be afraid to fail, because I think not everything you're going to create is going to be perfect. And I think that's one thing that, like, going to get a 4-year degree kind of, it pounds into your head that, like, you're going to get the grade. You want to produce, I mean, not that you don't want to produce your best work all the time, but understanding that, like, sometimes your best work can be even better, and you just need, some advice before it can get there, and not being afraid for it to not be perfect every time. Because I think that, like I said, that's part of the learning process for sure.
Any last tips? Because I really appreciate you guys and your time and all your insights.
I don't really have any last tips. Just
We covered a lot.
What I've been preaching to myself and my other friends who are just out here looking for jobs and not the most amazing economy is just use optimism as a strategy, and not just for yourself. Just if you keep using like positivity and stuff, it'll come back to you. And yeah, that's all I got.
I love that.
Like Claire, when you're looking for a job, because she is, she's not giving up. And I think, her and I met up last week, I think it was.
Yeah.
I was just so impressed with, like, the attitude that she had, because it can be so hard. I'm really lucky that, I am going to grad school and I don't have to be looking for a full-time career right now, because I don't know how I would, be doing if I wasn't. So I'm just really impressed by how Claire's handling everything. So I really hope, my fingers are crossed, and I really hope you find something soon, because I think
Thank
would
you.
love to have you.
Me too.
I think you will. You're doing all the right things. You just need you know, it has nothing to do with you at this point, right? So, but just keep doing what you're doing, reaching out to people. I'm available. Oh, if you have a small project, you know, I'm happy to help out. You know, maybe somebody is going to go on maternity leave. They would say, oh, okay, well, you seem like you might be a good fit. Let's try you out for a little bit before that happens. So, you know, I mean, and to some degree, life is still going on. And I think come January, things are going to be different. You know, typically in the summer is a slow time anyway. Not much is happening hiring wise. I think everyone's going to sort of wait and see what happens in the fall and be thinking toward the end of the fall, okay, we have a better sense of what direction things are headed in. And especially for digital agencies, there's a lot of demand. So much is moving, you know, businesses who never really considered digital. The call I was on earlier today, they were talking about how many businesses they've moved, retail businesses who had no e-commerce and had moved them online. And there's going to be a lot of skills in demand to kind of keep those up, you know, as retailers change inventory and sell out and need some help, right? Good. All right. Well, thank you both. I really appreciate your time and hope that some fellow recent grads can benefit from all your insights because I think you both have great things to contribute.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.